Alright, so this is TK Shazam. I'm just a nerd who likes Tekken, and I want to, you know, spread that knowledge and information I've gained throughout the years of playing Tekken, watching Tekken, playing a lot of Paul, watching a lot of Paul, yada yada yada. Right? Not a professional player. This is not gospel. However, this will hopefully give you some insight into Tekken as a game and then a little bit of Paul to maybe get you to reconsider and rethink some of the aspects of the game and help you in your journey as you try to learn this overly complicated game. It's really simple once you get there, but holy fuck, getting there is insane. The concept I want to talk about today is layers. Layers by the Fighting Game Glossary by Infilament. A way to classify how deep your mind games are against your opponent. Right? There's a bit more, and I'll leave a link in the description so that you guys can find, see that definition, and also hit up the Fighting Game Glossary. It's an incredibly useful tool. The basic premise is that round start, you have no idea about anything about your opponent, right? So what do you want to do? You want to do whatever is the best thing you could be doing as your character. A lot of this for Paul is going to be obviously Death Fist, right? But as you fight stronger opponents, you'll find that doing Death Fist is kind of tough, right? More and more players will start blocking it. And then you might start looking at stuff like Quarter Circle Back 4. This neat little move that's a counter hit launcher that's plus on block and homing. Some would say it's pretty good, right? You quickly realize that you can just spend the entire time just slamming this move and, see what the opponent does, right? But what happens when they start reacting and showing good defense against your offensive options, right? When the opponent starts ducking Quarter Circle Back 4, what are you supposed to do? And that's what you want to start thinking about as you learn Paul or any character. Take any offensive option that you have, right? Literally anything besides a block punisher, right? You can use as offense. So start thinking, okay, if I start doing this move, what can my opponent do as a response? And when my opponent shows that response to beat my initial option, my layer 1, right? What is my layer 2? What do I start doing afterward, right? In my opinion, a layer should be very simple. It's something that as you develop your skills as a player, you kind of figure out, we all start autopiloting a little bit, right? I'm not thinking about every single little interaction I'm doing in Tekken, right? Some of it's on autopilot and some of it is I have to think in the moment. But the idea is that your layer 1, I'm not trying to run this multi-layered offense. For example, Paul has a down forward 1 that can cancel into backsway, which has a lot of options, right? Mid, high, low, sidestep cancel, canceling into other moves, right? A lot of options. I'm not trying to have a very complicated layer 1. My initial offense, how I start the game, should not be this complicated. I shouldn't be thinking about how to cycle between all these options because that takes mental energy. If I'm thinking about my offense, right, if I don't have enough time, then I waste energy when I could be spending it looking at what my opponent is doing and being ready for that, right? And I'm not trying to say you should have brainless offense, but it should be simple, it should be effective, and the goal should be achieving the most amount of reward for the least amount of commitment. That's why options like Quarter Circle Back 4 are so strong. You have a lot of reward, right? If this gets blocked, you're plus. If it hits, you get a knockdown into Oki or resetting to neutral. If it gets a counter hit, wow, a counter hit launcher, right? All of these rewards are stacked in my favor, and all I have to do is be a little bit close to the opponent and then press a button. Well, some motion input and then a button, right? In order to counteract this, the opponent has to be in range to whiff punish and then start ducking it. But then if they start ducking it, I can start doing mids. But the goal is, I'm just going, I'm not sure what my opponent's doing. Of course I'll go back 4. I'm not sure what my opponent's doing, but I'm afraid of them ducking. Of course I'll go back 2. This one's a bit trickier since it's a heat engager. Thank God they gave him down forward 4. Oh my god. Oh, I could just make a whole video about this move. Right? Simple. Don't have to think about it too hard. Covers a lot of options. Those are the ideal. Now, when do you go into layer 2? This is where it gets tricky. The idea is that you are taking a look at what your opponent is doing. And when they start ducking it, you'll start doing your mids, right? And then they'll stop ducking it, right? Because you're doing a bunch of mids, they'll start stand blocking. And now that they're stand blocking, you can go back in the course, go back 4, right? That's the gist of it. Keep it simple. Be ready to go on to the next layer. And then when you deal with that, when you deal with the opponent's response, right, be ready to go back to the first layer. Or you go, okay, you're stand blocking again. Here's a new option, right? There's a lot of ways to define this whole relationship and synergy between moves, but the basic idea should be you're doing an option, the opponent shows you a reaction, you adjust your offense going to the next layer to make them stop that, right? And then you go back into layer 1. Your layer 1 should be your goal. And here's the thing, layers can change as you play, right? When I first started playing Paul, I started doing a lot of this. This mid-high string was really powerful, really easy, not a lot of players knew how to deal with it. And then, of course, they gave him this backswing cancel, which is hilarious. But then players started dealing with it. They started ducking the high on reaction, they started launching me for it, I was lost, I didn't know what to do. And over time, I started figuring out that, okay, I can't do this canned mix-up string because the timing is very easy for opponents to guess. And if I start going for single moves, I can start doing Corsica back 4. But then what happened? I started doing Corsica back 4 into Corsica back 4, and I started getting jabbed out of it. The opponent would start jabbing me, start pressing and mashing buttons. +1's not a lot, right? And then what I started doing is, oh, okay, well, I'll start jabbing them. The jab will immediately hit, I get a bunch of plus frames, and then start doing Corsica back 4 again, right? Or I would just do this into throw. As you develop as a player, you kind of figure out, okay, these are my current offensive options. They're not working out, so what do I do next? And you should always be thinking about that as you establish a layer 1, start thinking about, oh, okay, well, what do I do when my opponent knows how to deal with my layer 1? What is my layer 2? When you figure out the layer 2, right, the response to your opponent's response, you have to make a decision of, well, not really a decision, but you have to kind of get a feeling of, okay, when can I go back? When can I go back to my layer 1? Why? Because oftentimes your layer 2, right, not for every character, but for example for Paul, dealing with an opponent ducking to Corsica back 1, I start doing mids, right? But this mid is -9 on block, completely killing my turn. It doesn't have the pushback it had in Tekken 7. It's also a heat engager, so I don't always want to use it. And it's not easily spammable, right? With this, I can just repeat this ad infinitum, right? +1, +1, +1, right? I can repeat that instantly. Doing this is not always going to be easy. So you have to be ready in order to, okay, I went to my layer 1, the opponent's showing a response, let me go to my layer 2, and then you have to kind of make an educated guess. right? Oh, I've conditioned them a lot with my layer 2. I think it's safe to go back to my layer 1 because that will enable more offensive options. The idea is just start thinking about how your interactions interact with everything else, right? If it's a high, how does it interact with your mids? If it's a low, how does it interact with your mids or your other highs, right? Sometimes you want the high, sometimes you want the low. And constantly think about, okay, what do you want as a player to be your layer 1, right? Some players as Paul just focus on just whiff punishing. They don't even bother throwing out this move. They're just going, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna wait, maybe throw out a low. Some players will prefer the low, right? This is actual damage as opposed to just the chip damage you get with Core Circle Back 1. But that should be the little bit of an introduction and rambling into what layers are, how they look at for characters, more specifically how something like layers look for Paul. It's something that as a newer player should start considering and start categorizing, kind of creating a game plan, right? The goal is creating a game plan, and then that way you can start polishing it and refining it. All right, if you have any questions, just let me know.